English Each Day presents Daughter of the Past, Woman of the Future. My name is Seo Yejin, a name that means wisdom and treasure. A name that, to my family, means the daughter who should have been a son. I grew up in a house where my older brother's footsteps were louder than mine, where the dinner table always had the best cuts of meat on his plate first, where my mother would sigh whenever she saw me studying too hard and say, "A woman who knows too much scares good men away." But I kept studying anyway, 'cause I did not want to be a good wife. I wanted to be a damn good lawyer. My grandmother never spoke about the war. She only told me stories when I was quiet enough to listen. When I was 16, she whispered one night, I walked for days with nothing but rice in my pocket. We lost everything. We ate boiled tree bark to survive. I swallowed. Halmiani. She looked at me, eyes soft. We did not have choices, Yejin. But you do. I was 7 years old when she said those words, and I spent the next 20 years trying to believe them. Being a woman in law school was lonely. I sat in rooms full of men who looked at me like I was an accident waiting to happen. "Isn't law too intense for a woman?" one classmate had asked. I smiled, leaning forward. "Try keeping up with me and you'll find out." My father never spoke about my achievements. Not when I passed my exams. Not when I got an internship at one of the top firms in Seoul. But the moment my cousin got engaged, he looked at me and said, "When will you stop playing and start thinking about a real future?" I clenched my fists under the table. "My future is in courtrooms," I said. "Not kitchens." His chopsticks hit the bowl loudly. My mother sighed. And I knew what they were thinking. A daughter like me was not their dream. But that night I looked in the mirror and reminded myself, I am my own dream. The first time I met Kang Jisoo, I was running late. The second time I was running from myself. He was a public defender. The opposite of me. Where I wore tailored suits and worked in pristine glass offices, he wore rolled-up sleeves and fought for people who had nothing. We met in a courtroom. He caught my gaze across the room 1 second too long, and when I walked past him, he smirked. "Seo Yejin," he murmured like he already knew me. Top student, big law firm, always ahead of the game. I raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" Jisoo leaned back, unbothered. "Someone who isn't impressed by you." I should have been irritated. Instead, I smiled. 'Cause for the first time in a long time, someone saw me, not just my achievements. Jisoo made me laugh in ways I hadn't in years. He took me to small street food stalls instead of expensive restaurants. He argued with me for fun, pushing me to see the world outside of corporate law. "Don't you ever get tired of proving yourself?" he asked one night. I looked at him, chopsticks frozen midair. "What?" He smiled, softer this time. "You always look like you're waiting for the next battle." I wanted to tell him, that's what being a woman in this world means. But instead I just sighed. Some of us don't have the luxury of stopping. Jisoo reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Maybe you don't have to stop," he murmured. "But you can rest." And for the first time in years, I wanted to. We ended before we could begin. 'Cause I wasn't built for love. I was built for survival. And Jisoo? He was never going to be enough to make me stay. One night, as the city lights flickered outside his window, he traced circles on my palm. "Tell me one thing," he whispered. "If you didn't have to prove anything, if the world wasn't waiting for you to win, would you still leave?" I swallowed hard. Then, softly, yes, Jisoo exhaled, smiling, like he had always known. Kissed me slow, deep, lingering. Then he whispered against my skin. Then go. Winning felt exactly how I imagined it would. And yet, it meant nothing. Courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. I had just won my first major case, a high-profile discrimination lawsuit against a powerful corporation. For months, I had fought against men twice my age, against their condescending smirks, against their whispered bets on when I would crack. But I didn't. 'Cause I am Seo Yejin. And I do not lose. That night, my colleagues took me out for drinks. To Yejin, someone cheered, raising a glass. But the only call I wanted to take never came. Not from my mother. Not from my father. Not even from my brother. 'Cause to them, this victory was nothing compared to marriage and children. 'Cause no matter how many times I won, I would always be losing in their eyes. When my grandmother fell ill, I went home. Not for my parents. For her. She looked smaller than I remembered, tucked beneath thick blankets, her hands as delicate as paper. Yejin, she murmured, a tired smile on her lips. I sat beside her, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'm here, Halmiani. She nodded slowly. Of course you are. Because unlike the rest of my family, she had always known I would come back. You remind me of myself, she whispered one night. I frowned. Halmiani, I'm nothing like you. She smiled. A knowing, bittersweet smile. You think you're the first woman in this family who wanted more? She asked. I went still. She exhaled softly. When I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. But your great-grandfather, he told me a wife's place was in the home. I swallowed. And you listened? She sighed. I had no choice. I looked away, throat burning. She squeezed my hand. But you do. Her voice was quiet but firm. Whatever life you want, Yejin, take it. And for the first time in my life, I believed I could. The night before I left, my mother stopped me in the hallway. I braced myself for another lecture, another sigh, another disappointment. Instead, she just looked at me. And softly, you really won't stay? My heart clenched. Because for the first time, her voice wasn't angry. It was just tired. And maybe a little sad. I shook my head. No, Yama. I won't. Silence. Then she nodded, looking away. I see. She turned to leave, then hesitated. When I was younger, she murmured, I wanted to move to Seoul and open a restaurant. I blinked. What? She smiled barely. I never told you that, did I? I swallowed. Why didn't you? She exhaled. Because I was a daughter. And daughters don't ask for more. The words hit me like a wave. 'Cause suddenly I realized she was never my enemy. She was just a woman who had been forced to let go of her own dreams. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want me to do the same. The next morning I left. Not because I didn't love them, but because I finally loved myself more. Years from now, maybe they will understand. Maybe they won't. Maybe my mother will always sigh when someone asks why I'm still not married. Maybe my father will never speak of my career like it means anything. But that's okay. 'Cause I will wake up in my own apartment, put on my own suit, and walk into a courtroom that belongs to me. 'Cause I will stand where women before me were never allowed to stand. 'Cause I am Seo Yejin. And I have finally chosen myself. Love this story? Subscribe to English Each Day for more inspiring emotional storytelling. Like this video so more people can enjoy this story.